The story of beauty in the medieval world begins not in the mirror, but in the mind, where ideals were shaped by religion, class, and an ever-changing sense of what it meant to be pure, noble, or divine. In the Middle Ages, people didn't chase beauty for the sake of vanity as we often do today. Rather, they saw beauty as a reflection of inner virtue, a window into the soul that God Himself might have sculpted with moral intention. To sleep through this boring history, imagine the dim glow of candlelight flickering over a cold stone wall, the air heavy with incense, and the faint sound of monks chanting in the distance, as a medieval lady slowly brushes her hair with a carved wooden comb. In this time, pale skin wasn't just beautiful, it was holy. It told the world you were untouched by the sun, too delicate for labor, too noble for the fields, a creature of privilege and refinement. Women used lead-based powders to achieve that pale look, not realizing the poison slowly sank into their bodies. The more ghostly the skin, the higher the status. They would mix vinegar with white lead, apply it in thin layers, and sit still for hours, hoping the result would look natural under torchlight. The irony was that beauty in this age demanded suffering. Those who appeared most delicate were often the ones enduring the most pain behind closed doors. And men, too, followed strange standards. Knights and noblemen prized broad shoulders, long hair, and soft hands, a curious combination of strength and gentleness. They wanted to look like warriors who prayed, not brutes who labored. It was an age when beauty and morality intertwined so deeply that an ugly face could be read as a sign of sin or corruption, while a fair one was seen as evidence of divine favor. The Church's influence ran deep. Paintings of the Virgin Mary shaped how women were expected to look slender, modest, with downcast eyes and a small mouth that never appeared to speak too much. Silence was part of beauty, and obedience was seen as grace. A beautiful woman was one who didn't challenge her husband, who walked slowly, who lowered her gaze in public, and carried herself like a vessel of purity rather than a person of will. In castles and courts, this ideal was carefully performed. Women wore long gowns that hid their bodies completely, yet fashion was still an unspoken competition. Fabrics, colors, and tiny details separated the noble from the common. Blue was especially revered. It symbolized loyalty, faith, and the heavens, making it a favorite among women who wanted to mirror the image of Mary. Perfumes were rare and precious, often made from crushed herbs and animal musk. The wealthy dabbed it behind their ears to mask the odor of days without baths. And harrow hair was everything. Golden hair was considered divine, not because it was rare, but because artists painted angels with golden halos, and society followed that same image. Women who weren't naturally blonde used saffron and lye to lighten their hair, often burning their scalps in the process. Still, they persisted, because beauty in the medieval world wasn't personal, it was social, almost spiritual. To be beautiful was to please God and man alike, even if it meant disfiguring oneself in the process. Meanwhile, men's grooming rituals were less obvious, but equally strict. Beards came and went, depending on the century and the region. In some courts, clean-shaven faces represented refinement. In others, beards symbolized wisdom and authority. Hands were expected to be clean, nails short, and clothes without visible stains, because even the smallest detail could betray a man's class. Medieval society was obsessed with order. Everything had to be in its place, from one's prayers to one's appearance. The peasants, of course, lived far from this idealized beauty. Their skin was darkened by labor, their clothes coarse and practical, and their hair tied back for convenience rather than fashion. Yet even they internalized these standards, believing that fairness and refinement were marks of divine blessing. It's a strange irony of history that beauty often divides more than it unites, creating hierarchies where there might otherwise be humanity. Still, beneath the rigid rules and rituals, people found their own quiet pride. A peasant girl might take a moment to braid her hair with wildflowers. A knight might polish his boots until they reflected torchlight. And in those small gestures, we glimpse the universal human desire to be seen, to be valued, to be beautiful in some way. As centuries passed, ideals shifted, but the medieval foundation, purity, modesty, and spiritual symbolism would echo across time. Even today, the faint traces of that world survive in our fascination with pale skin, soft features, and the myth of effortless beauty. When we look at old paintings, we imagine elegance and grace, forgetting the lead paint, the restrictive corsets, and the endless effort hidden behind those serene faces. So, as you lie back and let your mind drift, imagine that world slowly fading into silence, the castles dimming, the perfumes fading, and the whispers of beauty fading into sleep. For in truth, the beauty of the Middle Ages was not only seen, it was endured, and in its endurance, we find both the tragedy and the poetry of what it once meant to be beautiful. As the medieval world continued to define beauty through faith and hierarchy, another layer of fascination emerged: the obsession with symmetry, proportion, and divine balance. To the medieval mind, beauty wasn't chaos, it was order, a reflection of the universe's perfect design. Scholars and theologians often quoted Aristotle and Augustine, arguing that true beauty lay in harmony, not extravagance. A face was beautiful if its features were measured, its eyes aligned, its nose straight, its mouth small and delicate. Anything that deviated from symmetry was whispered to be a mark of imperfection, even evil. This belief went far beyond vanity. It was an ideology, one that shaped portraits, sculptures, and even marriages. Noble families arranged unions based not on love, but on appearance, because a beautiful lineage was considered blessed, a sign of divine favor that would continue through generations. Picture a medieval painter bent over his canvas, mixing pigments made from crushed gemstones and rare minerals, carefully shaping a noble woman's face so that her proportions would please not only her husband, but also God himself. Behind the beauty, there was calculation. Artists learned to paint according to the golden ratio, believing that divine geometry could make human faces appear more heavenly. And yet, most people who lived in those times never saw themselves as we do today. Mirrors were rare and crude, their reflections warped by bubbles in the glass. The only way many people knew their own face was through water rippling, imperfect and distorted. Imagine that for a moment, living in a world where your image was never clear, where beauty was what others told you it was. There were no photographs, no mirrors, no makeup, tutorials, only reputation and rumor. A woman could be praised for her beauty by a single poet, and that description could follow her for life, shaping how others saw her without ever truly knowing her face. This gave rise to a strange social theater in which appearance and perception blurred into myth. The noble courts of France, Italy, and England became stages for this performance. Women painted their lips faintly with crushed berries, rubbed herbs on their cheeks for a hint of blush, and carefully plucked their hairlines to achieve a higher forehead, which was seen as the mark of intelligence and refinement. They even removed their eyebrows entirely to create an expression of calm detachment, a kind of angelic vacancy that men found mesmerizing. This aesthetic of restraint reflected a deeper moral lesson. Beauty must never appear too eager to be desirable. One had to seem distant, controlled, almost otherworldly. Excess color or expression suggested lust, vanity, or sign. The church preached moderation in everything, even beauty. So while noble women spent hours perfecting their appearance, they did so under the constant pressure of seeming effortless. A woman too aware of her looks was a threat to moral order, while one who appeared modestly radiant was praised as virtuous. Men faced their own quiet burdens. Young squires and courtiers studied how to move gracefully, how to bow, how to walk with confidence but not arrogance. Their clothes were designed to accentuate height and poised tunic belts cinched at the waist, tall boots to elongate the legs, and flowing sleeves that gave their gestures a poetic flair. Hands, again, were a mark of distinction. Soft, pale hands told the story of noble birth, while calloused fingers betrayed the fields. To keep them smooth, men rubbed them with animal fat and herbs, an early form of lotion. Some even wore gloves indoors to protect their skin from the elements. Yet for all the elegance and discipline, there was deep insecurity behind these rituals. The medieval obsession with beauty was not about joy, was about control. It reflected a world where one's appearance determined their fate, where even the smallest imperfection could invite judgment or exclusion. The poor could not afford to chase these ideals, yet they were reminded daily of their difference. In marketplaces, minstrels sang songs of noble ladies with skin like lilies and hair like gold, reminding everyone that beauty, like wealth, belonged to the few. Meanwhile, the church tried to balance the obsession by preaching inner beauty, but even those sermons were contradictory. A sermon might warn against vanity while praising the Virgin Mary's radiance in the same breath. In a sense, the church itself could not escape the allure of physical perfection. Paintings of saints, angels, and martyrs all shared the same idealized faces, flawless, calm, untouched by human struggle. This spiritualized beauty was powerful propaganda. It told people that holiness and loveliness were twins, that to be close to God was to be aesthetically pure. Those who fell outside these ideals, women with darker skin, stronger features, or unconventional bodies, were quietly erased from the collective imagination. They existed in reality, of course, but not in the paintings, poems, or songs that shaped memory. This selective storytelling turned beauty into both a weapon and a prison. For women especially, the stakes were high. A noblewoman's marriage, prospects, her influence, even her safety, often depended on how closely she matched the prevailing standard. Many resorted to dangerous cosmetics, mercury, lead arsenic to lighten their skin, or remove blemishes. Some used vinegar rinses to thin their blood, believing it made their skin more translucent. Others drank concoctions of herbs and metals, unaware that their pursuit of beauty was slowly poisoning them from within. And yet, these rituals persisted for centuries, handed down from mother to daughter, each generation chasing the same impossible purity. It's haunting to think that what we now call self-care once meant self-harm, but the story of medieval beauty is full of such contradictions. It was a time when suffering was sacred, when endurance itself was seen as beautiful. The more a woman could bear in silence, the more graceful she appeared. Perhaps that's why medieval beauty seems so haunting to us today. Wasn't about looking alive, but about appearing eternal, untouchable, distant. Every pale face and delicate gesture was a silent declaration. I am above the world. I am pure. I am chosen. Beneath the candlelight and the music of lutes, these ideals ruled the human heart like invisible kings. Even as centuries passed and the Renaissance dawned with new ideas of beauty, the ghost of medieval aesthetics lingered, quiet, symmetrical, holy. And so, as you drift deeper into this boring yet strangely captivating history, remember that beauty in the medieval age was not a celebration of life. It was a performance of faith, a fragile theater where appearance and morality shared the same stage. By the later centuries of the medieval era, beauty had become not only a personal aspiration, but also a form of currency, a quiet but powerful language spoken through fabrics, perfumes, and posture. To be beautiful was to command attention in a world that otherwise silenced most voices, especially those of women. Beauty opened doors that rank alone could not. In royal courts, from England to Italy, ladies-in-waiting competed not only for jewels or titles, but for admiration, and admiration that could transform into influence, sometimes even survival. Behind every courtly romance and poem lay an unspoken truth. The more beautiful a woman appeared, the more power she could wield in a system that gave her none by right. Men wrote sonnets to their muses, painting them as divine figures of purity. But these poems also served as social armor for the poet himself, elevating his reputation through association with an idealized form of beauty. And so the cycle continued. Women performed beauty to gain security. Men celebrated it to gain prestige, and society as a whole treated it like sacred currency. Imagine the great halls of Europe filled with flickering light, the scent of beeswax and wine heavy in the air, as noble guests whispered about who looked most radiant that night. Underneath the laughter and music, there lingered anxiety. A single blemish could invite ridicule. A poor choice of color could ruin reputation. And even the way one carried oneself across the room could alter the perception of an entire family. Posture was everything. A straight back, slow steps, and lowered eyes were the hallmarks of refinement. Women were taught from a young age to walk as if gliding, to keep their gestures small and contained, to let mystery replace motion. Men were instructed to move with controlled confidence, to display strength without aggression, grace without softness. Every gesture, every glance became a silent performance of beauty, rehearsed endlessly and judged without mercy. And while nobles obsessed over appearance, the church continued to preach against vanity, creating a constant tension between indulgence and restraint. Monks warned that beauty was fleeting and deceptive, the devil's favorite tool for leading souls astray. Yet even monasteries were not free from aesthetic order. The architecture, the illuminated manuscripts, the embroidered vestments all reflected the same yearning for harmony and divine proportion that shaped human ideals. In essence, beauty was everywhere and nowhere, both worshipped and condemned. People feared it, desired it, and shaped their lives around it, not realizing that their collective obsession was building the foundation for what would later become the Renaissance's celebration of art and form. But before that age of rebirth arrived, medieval Europe remained trapped in its paradox, a place where purity meant power and appearance meant worth. The tragic stories buried in this era are many. Young girls locked in towers for refusing arranged marriages. Women accused of witchcraft because they were too beautiful, and others shunned because they were not beautiful enough. Beauty became a double-edged sword, a blessing that could quickly turn into danger. There were even cases where women intentionally marred their faces to avoid unwanted attention, cutting their skin or burning it with oil to destroy what society praised, choosing scars over shame. It is a haunting reminder of how deeply external ideals can wound the human spirit. And still, the same rituals continued. In private chambers, women mixed crushed pearl into their creams to brighten their complexion, rinsed their hair with rose water, and chewed herbs to freshen their breath. Men shaved with dull blades, combed their hair with bone-made combs, and perfumed their tunics with lavender and myrrh. The wealthy sent servants across seas for rare ingredients like ambergris, civet, and saffron, while the poor used what nature offered: ashes, herbs, and river water. Beauty was not evenly distributed, but the desire for it was universal. Every village had its own local version of beauty: a girl whose laughter was called charming, or a man whose posture reminded others of knights in old tales. These were fleeting, fragile reputations, built not on symmetry or wealth, but on warmth, charisma, and humanity. And perhaps that was the quiet rebellion against the rigid ideals of the elite, the belief that beauty could also live in imperfection. Still, history remembers what is recorded, and the pens of chroniclers favored the courts. Thus, the legacy of medieval beauty is gilded, ghostly, and painfully selective. The pale faces, golden hair, and holy gazes, immortalized in paintings and poetry, tell only half the story, the half that flattered those in power. The other half, the real faces of the working people, faded, unrecorded, like smoke from a candle in a drafty room. Yet, if we close our eyes and listen closely, we can almost hear them: the laughter of peasants around the fire, the whispered compliments of lovers in darkened barns, the tender pride of a mother braiding her daughter's hair before church. These too were acts of beauty unseen, unpainted, but deeply human. And so the medieval world, for all its rigid rules, still contained small pockets of authenticity, moments when beauty escaped the chains of expectation. Perhaps it is in those quiet, unrecorded moments that we find the truest reflection of what beauty meant back then, not a divine perfection, but a fragile, shared effort to find dignity in a hard world. The medieval woman who risked her health for pale skin, the knight who polished his armor to impress his lady, the monk who painted the delicate curve of an angel's smile, all were searching for the same thing: a glimpse of the eternal, a touch of something beyond decay. And maybe, in their own way, they found it. Because beauty, in every age, is not about perfection, it is about hope. Hope that we can transcend our ordinary selves, even if only for a moment, even if only by candlelight. So, as this chapter fades and the medieval world grows quiet again, imagine the last echoes of footsteps down a castle corridor, the soft rustle of silk against stone, and the dying glow of torches painting golden light on pale faces. The night settles and history sleeps. But the question remains, were they ever truly beautiful, or were they simply trying to be remembered? As the medieval centuries quietly unfolded into the early Renaissance, the perception of beauty began to stretch beyond religion, slowly drifting toward human experience and curiosity. Yet it still carried the heavy echoes of divine judgment and moral structure. The people of Europe found themselves standing at a crossroads between faith and flesh, torn between the fear of vanity and the longing for expression. The church still loomed large over every aspect of life, but the rise of trade, travel, and new ideas began to whisper of change. Imagine the year 1300, cobblestone streets crowded with merchants from distant lands, carrying silks from Byzantium, spices from the East, and strange mirrors polished to near perfection. For the first time, people could truly see themselves clearly, and what they saw began to reshape how they thought about beauty. The reflection no longer belonged to God's image alone. It became personal. A woman staring into a glass mirror saw not a symbol of virtue, but a face, her own face, and the quiet vanity that came with that. Realization began to awaken something ancient in human nature. Across Europe, beauty evolved into an art form, yet it remained a dangerous luxury. In small villages, women still labored in fields and kitchens, their beauty practical and uncelebrated. But in the courts of Florence, Paris, and London, ideals were shifting. Artists like Giotto and Simone Martini began to paint with greater realism, giving life to faces that seemed to breathe, to eyes that looked back at you. Beauty was no longer confined to divine perfection, it was humanized. Yet this newfound realism also exposed flaws. Freckles, wrinkles, uneven complexions, these were now visible. And people began to chase a kind of impossible smoothness, trying to resemble the painted saints and noble figures they saw in art. To sleep through this dull and delicate transition, imagine the rhythm of a slow lute playing in the distance, the faint hum of prayers echoing through cold cathedrals, and the sighs of women sitting before their mirrors, dabbing their cheeks with rose oil, tracing their lips with crushed coral to mimic the blush of youth. Fashion, too, was changing. Where once simplicity symbolized piety, now extravagance became a mark of sophistication. Wealthy women wrapped themselves in layers of velvet, their sleeves trailing like rivers of fabric, while men wore fitted tunics and hose that showed off their figures, something unheard of a century before. Beauty had become theatrical, a performance of wealth and power. Hairlines continued to rise. Women plucked not only their brows, but also their hair from the temples to create a high/egg-shaped forehead that was thought to resemble wisdom and purity. It was an odd, almost alien aesthetic by modern standards, but in its time, it was the height of refinement. Men powdered their hair with flour, wore jeweled belts, and carried perfumed handkerchiefs. Their goal was not masculinity as we imagine it today, but grace, elegance, and poetic charm. Beauty was conversation, posture, scent, and movement, an entire language that defined status before a single word was spoken. And yet beneath all the glitter, there was still fear. Fear of aging, fear of sin, fear of being forgotten. To be beautiful was to be seen, but to be seen too much invited danger. In small ways, women began to push back. They wore brighter colors, experimented with cosmetics, and commissioned portraits of themselves, not as saints or queens, but as individuals. It was the quiet beginning of self-representation, though no one called it that yet. Artists were fascinated by this shift. They painted not only faces, but feelings, the subtle sadness behind a smile, the tension in a gaze. Beauty, once divine and untouchable, was now emotional. It could ache, it could desire, and that, perhaps, made it even more dangerous. As trade routes expanded, ideas from the Islamic world and ancient Greece began to re-enter Europe. Old texts on medicine, anatomy, and proportion resurfaced, offering new ways to understand the human body. Leonardo Fibonacci's mathematical ratios, rediscovered and celebrated, found their way into art and architecture, shaping how beauty was measured. The same ratios that built cathedrals now defined the ideal human form. The body was sacred geometry in motion, and once again, beauty became a kind of equation. The church, wary but curious, tried to control this shift. It approved art that glorified divine creation, but condemned depictions that celebrated mortal sensuality. Still, the line between admiration and desire grew thin. In dimly lit studios, artists studied the female form with both reverence and hunger, painting what they called perfection, but what was, in truth, fascination. Their muses, often young and poor, became immortalized in pigment and canvas, beautiful but voiceless, remembered only through the eyes of men. And outside those studios, real women lived their lives within the narrow space between admiration and control. A beautiful woman could inspire poetry or provoke suspicion. Her power was never truly her own. It was borrowed, granted by the gaze of others. Yet that gaze gave her a strange kind of immortality, one that neither time nor morality could erase. Beauty became the silent language of survival, and for many, it was the only language available. As night fell across medieval Europe, the line between holiness and desire blurred even further. Candles burned beside mirrors, prayers mingled with perfume, and beneath the vaulted ceilings of stone chapels, people continued to wrestle with the same questions. What makes something beautiful? Why do we worship it? Why do we suffer for it? These questions, whispered in every century, find their roots here, in this uneasy twilight between devotion and discovery. So, as you drift deeper into this story, imagine the sound of distant bells tolling over quiet towns, the flicker of torches reflected in river water, and the unending hum of history reminding us that beauty, no matter the age, has always been both a mirror and a mask, something we wear, something we chase, and something we never truly understand. As beauty deepened into the social fabric of late medieval and early Renaissance Europe, it began to serve as a form of identity, a quiet but unrelenting signal of who belonged and who did not. While once beauty was seen purely as a sign of divine favor, by the 14th and 15th centuries, it had evolved into an intricate system of social codes, each detail carefully orchestrated to communicate class, virtue, and aspiration. The wealthy displayed their beauty through ornamentation rings carved from ivory, necklaces adorned with pearls that symbolized purity, and gowns layered with fabrics imported from distant lands like Persia or Venice. Beauty was no longer a passive quality. It was a craft, something cultivated, rehearsed, and displayed for all to see. To sleep through this slow transformation, imagine the glow of torches flickering across stone halls, the rhythmic shuffle of slippers over marble floors, and the hushed gossip of courtiers debating who appeared most graceful that evening. In this world, even the smallest details mattered. A woman's choice of perfume might hint at her temperament: floral scents for innocence, musk for confidence, cinnamon or amber for mystery. Her hairstyle could speak volumes about her station. Braids wrapped like crowns suggested youth and modesty, while loose curls falling freely around the shoulders were associated with sensuality and, sometimes, scandal. Men, too, began to pay greater attention to fashion, trading rugged armor for finely tailored garments. Their tunics were cut to emphasize broad shoulders and narrow waists, their hair styled in soft waves that framed the face, and their beards trimmed to appear effortless yet deliberate. The body itself had become a statement, and control over it was a mark of sophistication. The church continued to walk a fine line, condemning vanity in sermons, while adorning its saints in gold leaf and jewels. Hypocrisy, in a way, had become beautiful too, because the performance of virtue mattered more than virtue itself. What people desired was not authenticity, but the illusion of purity, and the upper classes mastered that illusion like art. Women were expected to embody contradiction, to appear delicate but healthy, modest but alluring, silent but expressive through the smallest glance or gesture. They learned how to speak through silence, how to enchant through restraint. A lifted chin, a lowered eyelash, a perfectly timed smile could change one's entire social fate. This subtle dance between power and propriety turned beauty into a language that only the elite could fully speak. Yet beneath the polished surfaces, something raw stirred. Commoners who served in noble households witnessed this display daily, and slowly, pieces of that aesthetic trickled down. In towns and villages, young girls began weaving ribbons into their hair, copying the styles they glimpsed during processions or feast days. They couldn't afford silk gowns, but they dyed their linen dresses with herbs and berries to mimic the rich hues of the court. Beauty became an aspiration that transcended class. It was, for many, a dream of escape. And dreams, even the dullest ones, have power. The rise of the merchant class further complicated the picture. These new families lacked noble blood but possessed immense wealth, and they used beauty as their currency to buy respect. Their daughters were educated in the arts of refinement, how to walk gracefully, how to play the lute, how to apply powders sparingly so as to seem naturally radiant. Marriages between merchants and impoverished nobles became common, binding money and lineage through carefully managed appearances. Beauty, once the language of faith, had now become the grammar of ambition. At the same time, intellectual curiosity was growing. Philosophers and early scientists began to write about beauty as a natural phenomenon rather than purely divine. They studied facial proportions, eye color, and posture, searching for patterns that explained attraction. Some claimed that beauty was simply harmony, the balance of opposites, while others insisted it reflected moral character. It was a strange intersection of science and superstition, where a crooked nose could be seen as a flaw of both body and spirit, and fair skin still reigned as a sign of refinement, though now more for aesthetic than spiritual reasons. This obsession with fairness reached extremes. Women avoided sunlight, covering their faces with veils or hats made of stiffened fabric. They applied mixtures of ground chalk, vinegar, and egg whites to achieve a porcelain glow, despite knowing it cracked easily under the heat of candles. Those who could afford it hired attendants to fan them during feasts, not only to keep them cool, but also to maintain the illusion that their delicate skin was untouchable by sweat. Meanwhile, men applied rose water to their hands and faces before gatherings, using it as both fragrance and toner, a quiet ritual of self-control. Cleanliness, though difficult in an era with limited bathing, became a moral signifier. To appear clean was to appear disciplined. Dirt belonged to the poor, but pale, scented skin belonged to the chosen. Yet this obsession was always shadowed by fear of decay, of age, of losing the fragile perfection that defined one's worth. Older women who could no longer maintain their youthful looks were often dismissed, even mocked, while older men were praised for wisdom. Beauty, in short, was not fair even to those who embodied it. It was a fleeting privilege, constantly measured and judged, its loss considered almost a moral failing. Artists noticed this fragility and began to paint beauty not as eternal but as temporary. The portraits of this era often capture faces that seem aware of their own impermanence, soft, reflective, melancholy. In their eyes, we see not arrogance, but quiet resignation, the knowledge that beauty, like life, fades no matter how tightly one clings to it. Perhaps that is what makes medieval and early Renaissance beauty so haunting to us now. It was pursued with such devotion, yet haunted by its own mortality. Every pearl necklace, every powdered cheek, every comb of gilded bone whispered the same truth: time will take you. Still, people adorned themselves anyway, as if defiance could slow the inevitable. And maybe, in those small acts of care, there was something noble. The woman who woke before dawn to braid her hair, the man who polished his boots for hours, the couple who shared a moment's admiration in candlelight. They were not fools chasing vanity. They were simply human, seeking beauty in a world that offered so little comfort. Their rituals, though strange to us, were their way of making sense of existence, of finding meaning in order and elegance amidst chaos and disease. For even in times of plague and war, people found time for mirrors and perfumes. And that is perhaps the most human thing of all, the refusal to surrender to ugliness, even when surrounded by it. So as you drift through this quiet age, imagine the soft hum of life within the walls of ancient cities, the chatter of markets selling ribbons and combs, the laughter of maidens under sunlit balconies, the solemn gaze of knights adjusting their collars before a feast. All of it, every detail, part of a grand performance that sought to make life just a little more beautiful, if only for a moment. As medieval Europe drifted toward the dawn of the Renaissance, the idea of beauty began to stretch beyond faces, and fashion it seeped into behavior, voice, movement, and even the way one's presence filled a room. The noble class, now obsessed with appearances more than ever before, considered beauty not only a matter of skin and color, but of grace, restraint, and polish. A beautiful woman was expected to move slowly, to glide rather than walk, to speak softly, her words measured like poetry, and to express emotions in the slightest tilt of her head or flicker of her gaze. Men were expected to embody the same harmony, strength without roughness, confidence without arrogance. It was a strange kind of theater, where everyone was both actor and audience, performing refinement to prove their worth. To imagine it clearly, picture a candlelit banquet hall, long wooden tables lined with roasted meats and silver goblets, a musician playing a gentle lute in the background, and nobles dressed in embroidered silk, their laughter rehearsed, their smiles composed. Even in these moments of festivity, beauty governed the room like an unspoken rule. The way one ate, laughed, or even held a cup could betray their upbringing. To chew too loudly, to slouch, or to show too much joy was to risk being seen as unrefined. And so, people learned to control themselves until the control became instinct. Beauty was no longer about looking appealing. It was about mastering oneself until one's very posture became art. Those who could not afford such training were left to observe and imitate, creating a quiet divide between those born to elegance and those chasing it. Among the peasants, beauty was simpler, yet no less meaningful. Their lives were hard, their hands rough, their skin darkened by labor, but even there, traces of the ideal survived. Women washed their faces in streams at dawn, using herbs like rosemary and thyme to scent their hair. Men combed their beards with carved wooden combs before church, smoothing them with drops of oil pressed from olives or nuts. On feast days, even the poorest wore their best tunics, mended and re-dyed, walking through the village square as though they too were part of the great performance of beauty that the world demanded. The church's influence continued to shape how people thought about physical appearance, preaching that outer beauty could reflect inner virtue, but also warning against the sin of vanity. Priests often spoke of how Lucifer, the most beautiful of angels, fell because of pride in his own form, a reminder that beauty, though divine in origin, could become dangerous if worshipped too much. Still, those same churches were filled with stained glass and golden icons depicting saints with perfect faces and radiant halos, their beauty a kind of holy contradiction. The faithful gazed upon those images, finding comfort in their serenity and, perhaps, secretly, a hint of envy. This paradox defined the medieval mind. Beauty was both a gift and a temptation, a blessing and a test. As Europe grew wealthier through trade, beauty ideals expanded beyond its borders. The arrival of exotic good spices, silks, and perfumes from the East brought with them new standards of allure. Pale complexions were still favored, but now subtle touches of color became fashionable. Women rubbed crushed berries on their lips and cheeks to mimic the flush of vitality. Coal and charcoal were used to darken lashes and brows, an influence borrowed from the East. These trends whispered of mystery, of faraway lands where beauty carried different meanings. To possess such luxuries was to show not only wealth, but worldly sophistication. Even the architecture of beauty evolved. Mirrors, once rare, became slightly more common in noble households. a polished piece of metal or a sliver of glass backed with mercury allowed the wealthy to gaze upon themselves more often, studying their faces as artists would study form and shadow. For some, this reflection was both fascination and tormenta, constant reminder that perfection was fleeting. The mirror became a symbol of both vanity and mortality, reflecting not just a face, but the endless effort to preserve it. Artists of the period captured this struggle in their work. Paintings from the 15th century often idealized their subjects, smoothing flaws, brightening eyes, and softening expressions. But beneath that perfection lay melancholy, the awareness that all beauty, no matter how divine, would eventually fade. The poets echoed this sentiment. Lines like "Beauty is a flower that withers in the wind" became common, recited by lovers and philosophers alike. In truth, medieval beauty was not about being seen. It was about being remembered. To be beautiful meant to leave an impression, to live in the memory of others even after time had stolen youth away. And so, people went to extraordinary lengths to achieve it. They mixed concoctions of lead and vinegar to whiten their faces, unaware of the poison seeping through their skin. They plucked their hairlines high to create the illusion of a broader forehead, a fashion inspired by the belief that intelligence and virtue were reflected in facial proportions. Some even bled themselves lightly to maintain the desired paleness, equating colorless skin with purity of soul. Each ritual, strange as it seems now, came from the same desire that drives people centuries later to control what cannot truly be controlled, to outsmart time itself. Beneath all the powders and perfumes, beauty was really about hope. A fragile attempt to hold on to youth and meaning in a world that offered little certainty. Men, too, participated in this quiet pursuit. Knights returning from battle polished their armor, not only for honor, but for the reflection it gave them. Reminder that even warriors sought grace. Scholars, though less concerned with looks, still debated beauty in their writings. Thomas Aquinas described it as that which pleases upon being seen, tying it to divine order, while others argued that beauty existed only in perception. The debate itself revealed how deeply beauty had embedded itself in every layer of life, from theology to art to the most private thoughts. And yet, for all its grandeur, beauty in this age remained tied to suffering. It demanded discipline, sacrifice, and sometimes pain. A noblewoman might sit for hours as her maid tightened her corset until her breathing grew shallow, all for the sake of posture. A young man might wear shoes so narrow they bruised his feet, simply because fashion dictated slimness as elegant. Behind the glamour, there was endurance. But perhaps that endurance gave beauty its meaning. For what is beauty, if not the ability to bear discomfort with grace? To watch this era unfold is to see humanity at its most paradoxical, vain and devout, cruel and tender, fleeting and eternal. The same hands that built cathedrals also crafted delicate jewelry. The same people who feared sin still spent fortunes to appear angelic. In the end, beauty was not merely about faces, it was about ideals, about the longing to belong to something greater, purer, and more perfect than reality could offer. To close your eyes and imagine this world is to drift through an age where beauty ruled quietly. Not through force, but fascination, its power felt in every painted portrait, every embroidered gown, every sigh from a young maiden brushing her hair by candlelight. It was a world that knew, even then, that beauty fades but loved it all the more because of it. As Europe moved closer to the High Renaissance, the idea of beauty began to shift once again, rippling outward from the still medieval courts toward a world increasingly defined by intellect, exploration, and art. It was as though the old candlelit ideal of beauty, pale skin, modest smiles, downcast eyes was suddenly illuminated by a new light, a light born of curiosity and rediscovery. People had begun reading ancient Greek and Roman texts again, finding within them not sermons of sin but celebrations of form, proportion, and harmony. Where the medieval mind had tied beauty to morality, the Renaissance spirit tied it to mathematics and symmetry. Beauty became measurable, a geometry of the flesh, a harmony of the body that mirrored the perfection of the cosmos. Imagine Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, filled with sketches of faces and bodies mapped out like architectural blueprints, each curve and angle representing divine logic. The human body was no longer a temptation to be hidden. It was a masterpiece of creation to be studied, painted, and admired. This new reverence for the body changed everything. Artists like Botticelli and Raphael painted figures who seemed to glow from within, their skin warm with life rather than ghostly pale. Women were now depicted with softer curves, fuller hips, and rounded belly, signs of fertility and natural grace, not indulgence. In these portraits, beauty breathed. It was no longer rigid or distant. It was human. Yet, for all its freedom, beauty still carried weight. In noble courts, from Florence to Paris, appearance was the currency of influence. Women like Isabella d'Este became icons of taste and power, setting trends with every detail of their attire. Her gowns were embroidered with gold thread, her hair styled in elaborate knots that defied gravity, her complexion carefully maintained with concoctions of honey, rosewater, and white lead. Her beauty was not passive, it was political. She understood that charm could open doors that words could not. Across Europe, noble women followed her lead, cultivating appearances not merely to please men, but to assert control in a world that seldom allowed them voice. The salons and courts became arenas of silent competition, where every glance and gesture was measured, every detail of dress scrutinized. The same was true for men. Gentlemen were expected to embody a refined masculinity, strong but cultured, their bodies disciplined through fencing, dancing, and horsemanship. Grooming became an art form. Hair was scented with oils, beards trimmed to precise shapes, hands softened with balms to show they were not tainted by labor. A gentleman's beauty was proof of his education and civility, just as a lady's beauty was proof of her virtue and grace. Beneath this culture of refinement, however, the shadow of decay lingered. The plague still haunted cities, reminding everyone that life and beauty were fragile. Portraits from this period often carry a strange duality, faces serene and perfect, yet eyes distant, aware of how fleeting youth truly was. Death, the ultimate equalizer, stood quietly behind every painted smile. To sleep through this period is to drift through a world both radiant and melancholic, a world that loved beauty because it knew it could not last. Fashion grew more elaborate, reflecting this desperate pursuit of perfection. Fabrics imported from the East, velvet, brocade, silk, became symbols of sophistication. Colors carried meaning, deep crimson for power, gold for divine favor, blue for purity, and black, newly fashionable, for elegance and intellect. The wealthy draped themselves in these hues as though they could wear eternity on their shoulders. Every layer of clothing, every jewel, every scent was a declaration of who they wished to be. In some ways, this obsession with beauty was also an act of defiance. The medieval world had taught people to fear the body. Now they celebrated it. Painters studied anatomy in secret, dissecting corpses to understand the muscles beneath the skin. Their discoveries transformed art and, by extension, beauty itself. The perfect face was no longer simply pale and symmetrical. It was alive with emotion, capable of joy, sorrow, and longing. A single expression could convey more beauty than 1,000 ornaments. Yet this deeper beauty was still shaped by hierarchy. The ideal woman remained fair-skinned, her hair light or golden, her features gentle and contained. Darker complexions, though admired in poetry for their mystery, were rarely celebrated in portraits. Class, too, dictated beauty. Peasants could be charming, but never truly beautiful in the eyes of society. Their tanned faces and calloused hands spoke of labor, not luxury. It was as though beauty itself had been divided along the same lines as wealth. And yet, beneath the glitter of noble courts, new ideas were stirring, ideas that would one day reshape everything. The printing press spread knowledge faster than ever before, allowing artists and philosophers to share their visions of beauty with the world. Books illustrated with woodcuts showed new hairstyles, new fashions, new ideals. Beauty became global for the first time, crossing borders through pages and ink. This democratization of beauty both liberated and complicated it. For the first time, ordinary people could aspire to look like nobles, or at least imagine it. Barbershops, apothecaries, and perfumeries flourished, offering creams, dyes, and tonics that promised transformation. Recipes for beauty circulated like secrets: crushed pearls for skin tone, vinegar, rinses for hair shine, and mixtures of herbs to sweeten the breath. It was an early form of the beauty industry, centuries before modern cosmetics, driven by the same promise: perfection just within reach. But alongside these new freedoms came anxiety. The more people saw images of idealized faces, the more they compared themselves to them. Mirrors, once symbols of self-awareness, became tools of judgment. Women began to spend hours ensuring that every curl, every thread of their gown matched the latest style. Beauty, once spiritual, had become performance. And in that performance, a quiet unease grew. For how could anyone ever be enough in a world that kept redefining perfection? Artists themselves began to question this. Some painted beauty in decay, flowers wilting, faces aging, the skin of youth fading into shadow. These works reminded viewers of memento mori, the truth that all beauty must die. Yet far from depressing, this idea gave beauty meaning. Because it was temporary, it became sacred. The woman who gazed into a mirror each morning was not vain. She was acknowledging her mortality. The man who dressed with care before a feast was not proud. He was honoring the fleeting gift of being seen. Even now, centuries later, their rituals echo through time: the careful grooming, the quiet sigh before a reflection, the longing to appear beautiful even in imperfection. That, more than any powder or jewel, was the real heart of medieval and Renaissance beauty: the desire to be seen, not by the world, but by time itself, and to whisper, "If only for a moment, I was here." By the middle of the Renaissance, beauty had become both a philosophy and a weapon, a concept that could elevate a person's place in society or condemn them to invisibility. The courtly world that had once whispered about virtue now spoke openly of taste, grace, and proportion. The human body, once hidden beneath layers of wool and linen, was now studied as if it were the finest architecture ever designed. Artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci dissected cadavers not out of morbid curiosity, but in pursuit of divine geometry, the sacred balance between flesh and form. They believed that the perfection of the human body mirrored the perfection of the universe, that beauty was not a sin, but a sign of divine harmony. This belief spilled out of their studios and into the streets. Tailors began cutting garments to emphasize natural shapes. Sculptors carved marble figures that seemed alive. Painters layered glazes of light to mimic the softness of human skin. It was as if all of Europe had fallen under the spell of the human form. The church, torn between theology and art, reluctantly accepted this fascination. Cathedrals that once warned of vanity now hosted frescoes of saints whose faces were modeled after real, beautiful people. The divine had become human, and the human divine. Yet beneath this newfound celebration of beauty lay quiet contradictions. For women, beauty remained their most powerful but dangerous form of influence. A woman who was too beautiful was seen as a temptation, while one who lacked beauty was pitied or ignored. Beauty was both armor and cage. A noble woman might spend hours in preparation, washing her face in rose water, dusting her skin with rice powder, painting her lips with crushed cochineal ritual, performed not out of vanity, but survival. Her beauty was her currency, her shield in a world where few other defenses were permitted. To be admired was to be safe. To be ignored was to disappear. The pressure was immense, yet women endured it with quiet elegance, turning self-presentation into an art of endurance. Men, meanwhile, pursued beauty as a mark of discipline. The perfect gentleman was expected to embody symmetry, not only in body, but in mind and manners. Fencing, dancing, poetry, and music hall were considered parts of beauty. A man who lacked grace was no different from one who lacked courage. He was incomplete. Thus, beauty became not just physical, but moral, a reflection of balance and self-control. And yet, for all its refinement, the Renaissance world was haunted by imperfection. Behind every portrait of serene faces lay the reality of disease, hunger, and mortality. Smallpox, scars, missing teeth, and deformities were common, yet rarely depicted. The image of beauty was a masca dream that floated above the roughness of real life. Painters like Bronzino perfected this mask, portraying their subjects as flawless, emotionless, eternally poised. Their faces were smooth, their gazes distant, their skin untouched by time. These were not real people, but ideals, frozen in oil and pigment. The more society adored these images, the more people began to imitate them. Women learned to keep their expressions calm, their movements slow, their emotions hidden behind serenity. Men practiced the same restraint, mastering the art of stillness. To move too quickly, to laugh too loudly, to show too much feeling, these became signs of vulgarity. Beauty was silence, symmetry, and control. But beauty also had rebels. The poets, especially in Italy and France, began to write of beauty not as perfection but as passion. Petrarch's verses about Laura spoke not of her flawless features but of the light in her eyes, the way her presence made his heart tremble. To him, beauty was not static. It was alive, fleeting, and powerful. This idea spread through Europe like perfume, softening the rigid ideals of courtly aesthetics. Now, beauty could be found in imperfection, in a freckle, a smile, a movement of the hand. It could belong to anyone who inspired emotion. And so, beauty became democratized, not by class, but by feeling. Still, in every mirror, fear lingered. Women feared aging, men feared failure, and both feared obscurity. The very pursuit of beauty became a reminder of how temporary it was. Cosmetics of the time promised miracles, but often caused harm. Lead-based powders that poisoned the skin, mercury ointments that burned it, and perfumes so strong they masked illness as much as they masked odor. Yet people continued to use them because beauty, for all its danger, made life feel eternal. A noble woman might suffer rashes from her face powder, but she would rather bear the pain than be seen without it. A young courtier might spend a fortune on silk and gold, knowing that the admiration of a single evening could change his fortune forever. Beauty had become a kind of devotion or religion in itself. As the Renaissance reached its height, portraits grew more intimate, more psychological. Artists like Titian painted their subjects not just as idealized figures, but as souls caught between light and shadow. Their beauty was no longer simply a matter of symmetry. It was expression, thought, and mystery. The eyes, especially, became the mirrors of beauty. They hinted at inner life, at something beyond the surface. A single look could convey love, power, fear, or longing. The beauty of this period was not about perfection anymore. It was about emotion restrained within elegance. And this made it all the more haunting. For the first time, art began to capture not just how people looked, but how they felt about being looked at. Meanwhile, fashion continued to evolve. Corsets, tightened waists, farthingales, widened skirts, and men's doublets grew more ornate. Clothing became architecture, shaping the body into ideals that nature had not intended. Yet even these exaggerations followed the same rule: proportion. The waist must balance the shoulders. The neckline must complement the face. Beauty was mathematics wrapped in silk. But it was also poetry. Even the poorest, who could not afford fine fabrics, found their own ways to join the ritual. Village festivals became opportunities to mimic noble styles with humble materials: ribbons dyed with plants, jewelry made from polished glass, and perfumes made from herbs and honey. For a night, everyone could feel beautiful, and that feeling was enough to make the illusion real. The ideal of beauty had traveled far from its medieval roots, yet its essence remained the same: the desire to be admired, to belong, to be remembered. Whether painted in gold or carved in marble, beauty was always an act of hope, a fragile bridge between the mortal and the divine. As the 16th century closed, beauty began to take on a new purpose. It was no longer merely a social signal or a personal virtue. It became a legacy. Nobles commissioned portraits to preserve their youth for eternity, knowing that time would erase them, but hoping paint would not. These portraits, still hanging in silent galleries centuries later, whisper the same truth: that beauty, even when gone, leaves behind its shadow. Perhaps that is why we find these faces so captivating even today. They are not just relics of another era. They are echoes of humanity's endless longing to be seen, to be loved, to be eternal. And in that longing lies the real beauty of history itself, not the perfection of form, but the persistence of the dream. As the Renaissance world matured and the echoes of medieval restraint faded into memory, beauty found itself at a crossroad between faith and flesh, between divine order and human desire. It was no longer confined to cathedrals or castles. It spilled into city squares, markets, and theaters, shaping not just the way people looked, but the way they lived. Across Florence, Venice, and Paris, the concept of beauty had become a performance of identity, a reflection of intellect as much as aesthetics. Artists, poets, and scholars spoke of beauty not as vanity, but as virtue, the external mirror of internal harmony. A beautiful person was one who embodied balance, whose gestures were gentle, whose voice carried calm confidence, whose clothing flowed naturally as if it were part of their soul. This elegance was not meant to shock, but to soothe. It was grace made visible. Imagine the cobblestone streets of Florence at twilight, merchants closing their stalls, the air sweet with the scent of baked bread and jasmine, and noble women walking slowly through the fading light, their silk gowns whispering softly with every step. They wore pearls at their throats, ribbons in their hair, and calm expressions, trained to appear effortlessly serene. To them, beauty was a duty, a sign of refinement and respect for the divine symmetry that governed all things. Yet, even as they upheld these ideals, change was stirring beneath the surface. The Reformation swept across Europe like a cold wind, questioning not just religious authority but the very meaning of virtue. Suddenly, modesty was prized again, and beauty became suspect. In Protestant regions, plainness was praised as honesty, while ornamentation was condemned as deception. Women covered their hair, darkened their clothing, and abandoned cosmetics, believing that simplicity brought them closer to God. Yet human nature could not be suppressed for long. Even in the most austere households, people found subtle ways to express grace through the careful folding of a collar, the shine of clean hands, the neat braiding of hair. Beauty, like truth, always found its way through silence. Meanwhile, in Catholic Europe, the Counter-Reformation embraced beauty as proof of divine glory. Churches were filled with radiant frescoes, golden altars, and statues of saints so lifelike they seemed to breathe. This religious tension mirrored the human one, the endless dance between humility and desire. In homes and palaces, the same contradiction played out. Women applied makeup secretly, mixing pigments in candlelight and whispering recipes to one another as if sharing forbidden prayers. They used crushed violets for blush, ashes for eyeliner, and beeswax for smoothness. Each morning ritual was both rebellion and devotion, a way to feel divine through the simple act of being seen. As the Renaissance gave way to the Baroque age, beauty became theatrical, exaggerated, and alive. Gone were the soft whispers of restraint. In their place came confidence and splendor. The body was celebrated not as sacred geometry, but as moving poetry. Clothing grew more extravagant. Truff collars, layered skirts, and embroidered bodices transformed people into living artworks. Men wore lace cuffs and jeweled swords, their hair perfumed and curled. Women adorned themselves with pearls that fell like tears upon silk. To walk through a court in 17th century Europe was to walk through a living painting, every face a study in ambition. But beneath the perfume and brocade, a deeper truth persisted. Beauty was still survival. For the poor, it was hope. For the rich, it was power. A merchant's daughter might attract a wealthy husband through her poise. A nobleman might win royal favor through his charm. Beauty could still open doors, but now it did so with the flourish of spectacle rather than the whisper of grace. In portraits of this era, we see this transformation clearly, where Renaissance faces gazed calmly into eternity. Baroque faces sparkle with vitality. The skin glows, the eyes glisten, the hands gesture as though caught mid-conversation. Painters, like Caravaggio and Rubens, filled their canvases with life, shadow, and movement. They painted beauty as fleshy, perfect, passionate, utterly human. Rubens, in particular, redefined the ideal of the female form. His women were full-bodied, radiant, and alive with sensuality. Their curves celebrated abundance rather than restraint. For the first time in centuries, softness itself became a form of power. This shift reflected a broader cultural change. Beauty was no longer merely moral or intellectual. It was emotional. The world had grown tired of control. People wanted to feel, to express, to exist in the fullness of their bodies. Yet, as ideals of beauty expanded, so did the obsession with maintaining them. The first beauty manuals appeared small printed books offering advice on skincare, hair care, and fashion. They promised to teach the secrets of eternal youth, though their ingredients were often dangerous. Mercury to smooth wrinkles, lead to whitened skin, sulfur to remove blemishes. The irony was cruel. The pursuit of beauty often destroyed the very faces it sought to perfect. But still, people persisted because beauty remained tied to meaning. To be beautiful was to have a place in the story of the world. To be seen was to be significant. And so, every morning, the same rituals began anew. The brushing of hair, the tying of ribbons, the delicate application of powder, the straightening of posture before a mirror that reflected not just a person, but an entire civilization's longing for immortality. Across Europe, fashion became faster, its trends spreading through trade routes and royal marriages. The Venetian glass industry boomed as mirrors became more affordable, turning bedrooms into private theaters of self-reflection. A young woman could now see herself clearly, perhaps too clearly, under the soft glow of morning light. She might trace the curve of her cheek and wonder whether she fit the ideal of her time to pale. Too thin, too soft, too hard. For centuries, beauty had been something defined by others. Now it had become something each person measured within themselves. This quiet shift marked the beginning of modern self-consciousness. The history of beauty was no longer written only in portraits, and poetry was written in thought. Philosophers began to question whether beauty was objective or merely perception. Was it truth made visible, as Plato had once said? Or was it a trick of the senses? Could a scar, a wrinkle, a shadow also be beautiful? These questions rippled through drawing rooms and lecture halls, planting the seeds of what would one day become the modern idea of individuality. But for now, the 17th century still belonged to the dreamers of symmetry and the worshippers of elegance. Even sleep itself, in this world, was a beautiful act. To rest was to preserve one's youth, to let the body renew the perfection it had worked so hard to maintain. Beds were adorned with lace, perfumes were sprinkled on pillows, and silence was cultivated like an art. Imagine it now, the faint crackle of a hearth, the distant sound of a lute, and the whisper of silk against linen as a noblewoman settles beneath embroidered sheets, her hair brushed smooth, her skin powdered pale. In her dreams, beauty is eternal, untouched by time. But when she wakes, the ritual will begin again, because to be beautiful, in this age or any other, is to chase the horizon, knowing you will never reach it, but finding meaning in the pursuit. And as the candles burn low and the air grows still, one cannot help but feel that perhaps the true beauty of those times did not lie in faces or fashion, but in the effort itself, the quiet human desire to bring light into darkness, to create grace where there was none, to make life, however brief, something worth admiring. As Europe moved into the 18th century, beauty began to shed its medieval shadows and Renaissance grace to embrace something new, an age of elegance, artifice, and delicate rebellion. The age of enlightenment was dawning, and with it came a new obsession with refinement, intellect, and the theater of appearance. To be beautiful was now not merely to be pleasing to the eye, but to embody taste, wit. Society itself had become a performance, and beauty was its script. In the salons of Paris, powdered faces glowed beneath chandeliers as men and women traded philosophical ideas over porcelain cups of chocolate. The skin was pale to the point of translucence, the lips painted coral or carmine, the eyes darkened with soot. A flawless face spoke of leisure, of not having to labor under the sun. Pale skin became the signature of privilege, while rosy cheeks were manufactured with rouge made from crushed cochineal insects mixed with vinegar and wax. Beauty was no longer about purity, was about control. Every curl of a wig, every stroke of a fan, every bow of a ribbon was a statement of identity. Women, in particular, mastered this language. Their dresses ballooned with hoops and panniers, expanding their silhouettes to impossible widths, while corsets cinched their waists to fragile extremes. It was as though the body itself had become architecture designed, engineered, and perfected to please the gaze of society. Yet beneath all that silk and powder lay a quiet truth. Beauty was both freedom and prison. It offered power through appearance, but demanded constant performance. To maintain this illusion, hours were spent preparing each morning, assisted by servants who powdered, pinned, and perfumed every detail. Wigs were styled high with ship models, feathers, or gardens of artificial flowers. Perfumes masked the lack of bathing, while Mausch's tiny black beauty patches were placed strategically on the face to highlight features or send secret messages. A patch near the mouth meant flirtation. Near the eye meant passion. Near the cheek meant discretion. It was beauty as language, as politics, as survival. But behind the elegance, Europe was restless. The Enlightenment encouraged thought, reason, and questioning of authority. Philosophers like Voltaire and Rousseau challenged tradition, arguing that truth lay not in aristocratic display, but in nature and simplicity. As these ideas spread, they began to alter the perception of beauty itself. Suddenly, the powdered masks of nobility seemed false. disconnected from the honest pulse of life. Natural beauty untainted by artifice became fashionable again, at least in theory. Portraits began to depict softer, more human faces, and gardens replaced gilded halls as symbols of grace. This return to nature was not rejection of beauty, but a reimagining of it. Women were still idealized, but now as embodiments of innocence and virtue rather than mere luxury. Simplicity became a new form of sophistication. Imagine Marie Antoinette at her private retreat in the Petit Trianon, dressed in muslin gowns that mimicked the simplicity of shepherdess, walking barefoot through manicured fields, her hair softly curled rather than towering with powder. It was a fantasy of freedom beauty made pastoral, yet it was still performance, a theater of nature staged by privilege. The poor had no luxury of appearing simple. They were simply exhausted. Their hands were calloused, their skin burned by labor, their faces unpainted, not by choice, but by necessity. For them, beauty was not an ideal, but a fleeting moment to smile in the midst of hardship. A clean dress for Sunday, a flower tucked into hair. The divide between aesthetic beauty and human dignity grew sharper, and history would soon respond with revolution. The French Revolution tore down the symbols of aristocratic vanity with brutal clarity. Powdered wigs and corsets became symbols of oppression. Simplicity became virtue again, but this time it carried the weight of survival. Beauty was redefined as honesty, as authenticity. Yet even as heads fell beneath the guillotine, the human desire for beauty did not diet, merely changed costume. In the early 19th century, Romanticism rose like a soft mist over the ruins of revolution, bringing with it a new kind of beauty, emotional, melancholic, and deeply personal. Artists and poets turned away from symmetry and perfection to embrace imperfection, passion, and individuality. Pale faces and dark eyes returned, not as signs of leisure, but as marks of sensitivity. A beautiful person was one who felt deeply, who carried sorrow gracefully, who seemed touched by something eternal. Women were painted, gazing out of windows, lost in thought, their hair loose and natural, their expressions tender yet distant. Men, too, cultivated an aesthetic of mystery, the tousled hair, the faraway stare, the poet's melancholy. Beauty became introspective. It was no longer about display, but about depth, the visible trace of invisible emotion. And yet, society still dictated how one should look to be considered beautiful. Manuals for women advised them to appear delicate, faint, and pure, as though strength itself were unfeminine. Skin was to be pale, hands slender, voices soft. The irony was bitter. Even the worship of nature came with its own unnatural expectations. Women fainted from tight corsets in the name of grace. Men starved themselves to maintain the brooding look of poetic fragility. Beauty had simply changed its vocabulary, not its tyranny. Across Europe, factories began to replace fields, and the industrial age darkened the skies. Urban life brought soot and smog, and with them came new anxieties about cleanliness and appearance. Soap advertisements promised purity. Perfumes promised escape from the stench of machinery. Beauty became a commodity, sold in bottles and powders. What had once been ritual was now business. For the first time, beauty entered the marketplace, and it has never left. Still, in the quiet corners of art and literature, another idea persisted, that true beauty could not be bought or painted or powdered. It was found in the fleeting, the imperfect, the human. The Romantics spoke of sublime beauty, the kind that overwhelms, that humbles the soul before mountains, storms, or tears. It was a return to awe, a reminder that beauty was not possession but perception. And as the 18th century faded into the 19th, this philosophy would plant the seeds for a new kind of revolution, not of politics, but of perception, where beauty would belong, not to kings or courts, but to everyone willing to see it in themselves and the world around them. As the 19th century unfolded, beauty entered a new era, defined by paradox and age, where progress and nostalgia coexisted, where industrial smoke rose above cities, but people longed for the romance of nature. This was the century of invention and introspection, of mechanical perfection and emotional depth. Beauty evolved with it, becoming more accessible, more public, and more personal than ever before. In the early decades, the influence of Romanticism lingered, weaving its spell over artists, poets, and ordinary citizens who sought meaning in the delicate imperfections of life. Pale skin still reigned supreme, but now it spoke of poetic fragility rather than aristocratic privilege. Women powdered their faces with rice flour, applied a faint tint to their cheeks with vegetable dyes, and carefully avoided the sun, believing that fair skin reflected moral purity. Men, too, cultivated refinement, clean-shaven faces, carefully combed hair, and dark, tailored suits symbolized intellect and discipline. Beauty was moral, not just visual. It represented virtue, restraint, and balance. Yet, beneath these ideals simmered a quiet rebellion. The industrial age was changing everything, how people lived, worked, and saw themselves. For the first time, mirrors were mass-produced, and photography allowed people to see their own likeness with startling accuracy. The self was no longer abstract. It had a face. Vanity, once a sin of the rich, became a habit of the many. Beauty parlors appeared in cities, catering to middle-class women eager to imitate the elegance once reserved for nobility. Hairdressing manuals, fashion magazines, and beauty advertisements spread through Europe and America, whispering that with the right products, anyone could be transformed. The message was intoxicating. Beauty was no longer destiny. It was effort. At the same time, society's expectations tightened like corsets. Victorian women were trapped between the angelic ideal of purity and the reality of industrial modernity. They were expected to be flawless yet modest, delicate yet efficient, desirable yet innocent. The hourglass figure became the dominant silhouette, achieved through corsets laced so tightly they could deform ribs and restrict breathing. Doctors warned against their use, but fashion triumphed over health. Beauty had become a kind of endurance test. To be admired was to suffer silently, gracefully, without complaint. And yet, within these constraints, women found power. The act of dressing, of presenting oneself, became a ritual of self-expression. Elaborate hairstyles, layered gowns, and carefully chosen jewelry allowed them to communicate mood and status in a world that often silenced their voices. A single brooch or ribbon could carry meaning, a secret code understood only by those who watched closely. This was beauty as language once again resurrected in the age of industry. Across the Atlantic, America was developing its own aesthetic culture. In the cities of the New World, beauty was democratic and pragmatic. Advertisements for creams, tonics, and perfumes filled newspapers, promising transformation and confidence. Pioneering women like Harriet Hubbard Ayer and Madame C.J. Walker would later build empires on these promises, redefining not only beauty standards, but the very nature of female independence. Their products sold dreams wrapped in glass bottles, dreams of belonging, of self-worth, of progress. In an age of machines, beauty became a way to feel human. Art, too, reflected these shifts. The pre-Raphaelite painters in England rejected industrial coldness, filling their canvases with vivid colors and luminous women whose long, untamed hair and melancholic eyes defied the stiff Victorian mold. Their muses were not perfect. They were alive, passionate, flawed. Their beauty was strange, emotional, and haunting, a protest against conformity. For the first time, individuality itself became beautiful. Yet, as the century moved forward, new forces began to shape the ideal. Science and medicine entered the conversation, turning beauty into a subject of measurement. Phrenology, physiognomy, and early anthropology attempted to define attractiveness by skull shape and facial symmetry, reducing art to arithmetic. These pseudosciences reinforced social hierarchies, classism, and racism, claiming that physical beauty was proof of moral and intellectual superiority. The mirror that once reflected humanity now began to divide it. At the same time, fashion accelerated. The invention of the sewing machine, synthetic dyes, and mass printing turned trends into commodities. Each season brought new silhouettes, new hairstyles, new colors. What had once taken months to change could now shift in weeks. Beauty was no longer a constant ideal, it was a moving target. Those who could keep up were admired. Those who could not were left behind. The pressure grew, and the culture of comparison deepened. By the late 1800s, photography had captured the public imagination. For the first time, real faces, not painted ones, defined beauty. Actresses, opera singers, and socialites became early celebrities. Their portraits reproduced on postcards and magazines. Their hairstyles, dresses, and features set the standard for millions. Beauty was now not only personal, but public, a collective fantasy that spread through images and words. It was both democratized and distorted. The poor could dream of elegance, but only through imitation. The rich could immortalize themselves, but only through illusion. And as urban life grew faster, people began to crave simplicity once again. Naturalism returned, this time with a twist. Health replaced fragility as the mark of beauty. Clear skin, bright eyes, and vitality were prized over pallor and faintness. Sunlight, once feared, became fashionable. The seaside holiday was born, and with it, the tan began its slow transformation from shameful sign of labor to symbol of leisure. The pendulum had swung again, as it always does in history. Beauty, it seemed, was never one thing. It was a dialogue between eras, each reacting to the excess of the one before. As the century drew to a close, the world stood on the brink of modernity. Electricity glowed in the streets. Steamships crossed oceans. Telegraphs carried words faster than ever before. The mirror of the modern age was being built, shiny, bright, and unforgiving. In that reflection, humanity saw both its potential and its vanity. The 19th century had taught the world to desire progress, but to fear change, to worship beauty, but to question its price. And in those contradictions lay the quiet truth of the human story, that every age invents its own version of perfection. But perfection, by its nature, can never be permanent. It is the imperfection, the fleeting moment, the softness of an unguarded face that truly endures. As gaslights flickered across city windows and women untied their corsets for the night, beauty once again became what it had always been, a sigh between the old and the new, between what we are and what we wish to be. By the time the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the concept of beauty was standing at a precipice between past and future, tradition and modernity, illusion and identity. The world was spinning faster. Now electric lights illuminated faces once hidden by candlelight. Cameras captured expressions once preserved only in paint, and motion pictures began to turn beauty into spectacle. For the first time in history, beauty was not just seen. The soft whispers of powdered salons and corseted parlors gave way to the buzz of industry and the glow of cinema screens. What had once been an aristocratic performance became a democratic obsession. Women no longer needed to be born into privilege to be admired. They could be discovered, shaped, and adored by the lens. The early 20th century introduced a new kind of beauty, modern, daring, and alive. It was the age of transformation, where the face became not a mask of duty, but a canvas of possibility. The Victorian ideal of modest fragility melted under the heat of change. Women cut their hair short, freed their bodies from corsets, and painted their lips red, not out of vanity, but defiance. The suffragette movement was reshaping not just politics, but perception. Beauty was becoming power. The 1920s flapper embodied this revolution: bobbed hair, kohl-lined eyes, and a confident smile that spoke of independence. She danced in smoky clubs, smoked cigarettes in public, and wore dresses that moved when she did. Her beauty was energy, not decorum. It was rebellion wrapped in satin and jazz. The idea that women could choose how to look, and, by extension, who to be, was radical. But even as this freedom flourished, commercial forces seized upon it. The cosmetics industry exploded, with brands like Max Factor and Helena Rubinstein turning beauty into empire. Advertisements promised transformation through products, offering women the illusion of control in a world that still restricted their choices. Lipstick became both armor and art. A single shade could mean modernity, confidence, liberation. For the first time, beauty and identity were entwined not by birth or class, but by choice. Meanwhile, Hollywood emerged as the new cathedral of beauty, projecting divine images of femininity and masculinity across the silver screen. Actresses like Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, and Jean Harlow became living myths, their faces sculpted by light and shadow, their glamour defined in cheekbones like marble, lips perfectly shaped, eyes heavy with mystery. Theirs was beauty as fantasy, designed to make reality seem dull by comparison. But behind every camera flash lay hours of preparation, layers of powder, and the quiet burden of perfection. Beauty had always been performance. Now it was global theater. Men, too, were drawn into this new visual world. The strong jawline, the clean shave, the tailored suit, these became the new ideals of masculine beauty, blending discipline with charm. For the first time, men were also expected to be aware of their appearance, to groom, to pose, to project. The mirror had turned into a stage for everyone. As the world marched toward the Second World War, beauty took on new meanings. In times of fear and uncertainty, it became a form of resistance, small act of hope. Women painted their lips bright red as bombs fell, using color as courage. Beauty as duty became the motto, reminding people that appearance could sustain morale when reality crumbled. In factory floors and ration lines, women wore scarves over their hair and rouge on their cheeks, not for vanity but for survival. After the war, the world wanted softness again, and the 1950s delivered it in pastel tones and idealized curves. The hourglass figure returned, epitomized by icons like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor. Their beauty was lush, approachable, and reassuring in its familiarity. It celebrated abundance after years of scarcity. But beneath the satin skirts and painted smiles, the same old struggle persisted. Perfection demanded sacrifice. Diet culture, fashion, pressure, and conformity crept back in, whispering that to be loved was to be flawless. Yet the 1960s shattered that illusion once again. The youth rebellion tore down not only social norms, but beauty norms. Suddenly, beauty was not about fitting in, it was about standing out. Twiggy's androgynous frame, Brigitte Bardot's tousled hair, and Audrey Hepburn's minimalist elegance each defined different kinds of allure, proving there was no single standard. The feminist movement gave beauty another meaning, choice. A woman could wear makeup or reject it, grow her hair or shave it, dress for herself rather than for the gaze. Beauty became plural, not singular. The mirror no longer dictated, reflected diversity. As fashion accelerated, beauty became a kaleidoscope, changing with every turn of culture. The 1970s embraced naturalism. The 1980s celebrated glamour and excess. The 1990s worshipped minimalism and grunge. Each decade carried its own rebellion, its own fatigue with the ideals before it. What remained constant was the longing to be seen, understood, valued. And that longing, ancient as time, tied the 20th century back to its medieval roots. For just as noble women once powdered their faces to show purity, modern women contoured theirs to express confidence. The tools changed, but the emotions did not. The 20th century's greatest invention was not cosmetics or cinema, but the idea that beauty could belong to everyone. Photography and advertising spread images across continents, but television and, later, the internet made beauty truly global. The mirror multiplied. Faces from every race, culture, and identity entered the conversation, redefining the word itself. No longer confined to pale skin or perfect symmetry, beauty began to evolve toward inclusivities, lowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. The human face, in all its variations, became a canvas for individuality rather than conformity. Still, the paradox endured. The more visible beauty became, the more invisible authenticity felt. The pressure to maintain appearances reached new heights in the age of media. Behind the glamour of Hollywood or the pages of Vogue, insecurities flourished like shadows. The 20th century ended with a strange silence, the hum of cameras replaced by the quiet hum of self-doubt, as people began to measure themselves against images too perfect to be real. Yet even that struggle carried meaning, for it proved that beauty still mattered, not as vanity, but as the language of self-recognition across centuries, civilizations, and technologies. The story remained the same. To call something beautiful was to call it human. The women and men of the 20th century inherited the burdens and blessings of those before them. They powdered their faces like nobles, adorned themselves like courtiers, and posed like Renaissance saints, but they also questioned, challenged, and reshaped those traditions with every brushstroke and photograph. As electric lights dimmed across dressing rooms and mirrors reflected tired faces beneath layers of powder, one truth lingered. Beauty was no longer about perfection, it was about presence. In the quiet after the flash, in the stillness before the applause, there existed something eternal and tender, the simple, fragile fact of being seen. That, perhaps, was the truest inheritance of all the ages that came before. As the 20th century transitioned into the 21st, beauty stepped fully into the realm of technology, image, and identity, becoming both more personal and more universal than ever before. The echoes of centuries past, powdered faces, corseted waists, pale ideals, and painted lips did not disappear. They evolved, reshaped by modern tools and digital reflections. What had once been seen in mirrors and paintings was now broadcast through screens, filtered through pixels, and edited with precision that the medieval mind could never have imagined. The dawn of the modern age brought with it a new paradox. The more real beauty became, the more artificial it appeared. In the early decades of the 21st century, beauty was no longer confined to royal courts or salons. It lived on the internet, in the endless scroll of faces, bodies, and styles. The world had become a gallery, and every person a potential portrait. Cameras on phones replaced the painted mirror, and social media became the stage where identity was performed. Platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok transformed beauty from a passive standard into an active pursuit. Makeup tutorials, skincare routines, and fashion hauls turned private rituals into global conversations. Anyone could become an influencer. Anyone could define what beauty meant for themselves and for millions of others. The democratization that began in the factories and film reels of the 19th and 20th centuries now reached its final form in the feed. But with freedom came pressure, constant, subtle, and unrelenting. Beauty, once performed for the few, was now judged by the many. Every photo, every angle, every filter became part of an ongoing performance of self. Perfection, once reserved for statues and queens, became an expectation for everyone. Skin had to glow but look natural. Bodies had to be toned but effortless. Faces had to show individuality while fitting within invisible templates shaped by algorithms and trends. The human face, once a mystery, was now a data point. Apps could smooth wrinkles, lighten skin, enlarge eyes, and reshape jaws in seconds. What centuries of painters had sought to idealize through brush and light could now be done instantly by code. Yet, even as technology blurred the line between real and unreal, it also revealed a deeper longing for authenticity. The more curated the world became, the more people yearned for something genuine. No makeup, selfies, body positivity movements, and campaigns celebrating diversity began to challenge the digital mask. Beauty, after centuries of uniformity, was fracturing into infinite versions. No longer was there one ideal. There were countless, overlapping, and evolving ideals that reflected the vast spectrum of human life. The history of beauty had reached its most democratic chapter. Anyone could belong. Anyone could be beautiful, at least in theory. But even this liberation carried the echo of the past, like the noble women of medieval courts who painted their faces to fit divine ideals, or the Renaissance muses who posed for symmetry and grace. The modern individual still looked outward for validation. The mirror had merely changed shape. It was now held in the hand, glowing softly, reflecting both face and expectation. Beauty had become communication, emotion, and even currency. In the digital marketplace, a face could sell a product, a smile could build a brand, and a single image could alter perception across continents. The global beauty industry grew into a multi-billion-dollar empire, shaping trends faster than ever before. Skincare regimens, once based on herbs and oils, now involved serums, acids, and biotech formulas. Makeup, once limited by geography, now drew inspiration from every culture on Earth. Korean glass skin, African braiding traditions, Indian kohl lines, Latin contouring, all blending into a shared global aesthetic. For the first time in history, beauty was truly international, a mosaic of traditions, technologies, and ideas. Yet, even amid progress, shadows remained. Unrealistic body standards continued to haunt both women and men, whispering that enough was never enough. The ancient hunger for perfection, painted in medieval frescoes and whispered in Renaissance ballrooms, still pulsed beneath the surface. Only now it was measured in likes and followers. A person's worth, once judged by noble birth or divine favor, was often reduced to digital engagement. The mirror had become addictive, reflecting not self-knowledge, but self-doubt. Still, amid the noise and distortion, a quiet revolution persisted. Artists, thinkers, and ordinary people began to redefine beauty, not as surface, but as story. Scars, wrinkles, and imperfections became emblems of experience, reminders that time itself paints the most honest portraits. In this way, the modern world unknowingly circled back to the wisdom of the ancients. The Greeks had once said that beauty was truth made visible. The medievals had said it was divine order revealed in form. The modern world, at last, began to say that beauty was humanity flawed, changing, and alive. As climate change, social upheaval, and global connection reshaped daily life, beauty became a form of resilience. The simple act of self-care, washing the face, braiding the hair, applying lotion, became rituals of peace in a chaotic age. Across the world, millions practiced the same gestures as their ancestors, though the tools had changed. A medieval noblewoman might have used rosewater from Venice. A 21st century woman used micellar water from Paris. A Roman matron might have applied crushed berries to her lips. A teenager today swiped on tinted balm. The essence was eternal, to honor the body as a vessel of expression. The past, it seemed, had never truly gone. It merely updated its reflection. And as beauty continued to evolve, it began to open its arms wider. Representation flourished. Different skin tones, hair textures, body types, and gender identities began to appear in mainstream media. Campaigns celebrated faces that would once have been excluded, declaring that beauty was not perfection but diversity. For the first time in human history, beauty no longer pointed upward, toward gods or monarchs, but outward toward humanity itself. The standard was no longer symmetry but sincerity, not conformity but confidence. Still, the tension remained. Every liberation carried a new form of captivity. The digital mirror, though wide, was still shallow. Behind the glowing screens, the ancient question lingered. What is beauty really for? Is it to please others, to find belonging, to assert power, or to seek peace within oneself? Perhaps the answer was all of these, or perhaps it was simpler, to remind us that in every age, amid all change, humans have always needed something to admire, something that gives shape to meaning. As night falls on the modern world and the blue light of phones fades into darkness, beauty returns to its oldest form, reflection. In quiet moments, when no one is watching, the rituals endure. The brushing of hair, the cleansing of skin, the sigh before sleep hall, echoes of the same longing that medieval women felt beneath candlelight, that Renaissance artists painted beneath gilded halos, that modern souls still feel beneath the hum of their screens. The story of beauty, from past to present, is the story of humanity's desire to make life a little more luminous, even in its most ordinary hours. And as tomorrow's technologies promise new transformations, virtual faces, augmented realities, synthetic perfection, the question remains whether beauty will finally transcend the body or simply return, as it always does, to the quiet truth of the human face. As beauty entered the postmodern era, it began to fragment like light through a prism scattering into 1,000 directions, each reflecting a different truth, a different culture, a different dream. The 21st century did not just redefine what beauty looked like. It redefined what beauty meant. Once a rigid hierarchy dictated by class, religion, or empire, it now became a language of individuality. The medieval lady might have painted her face pale to signal purity. The Victorian woman cinched her waist to prove virtue. But the modern person paints, pierces, or tattoos their body to announce identity. Beauty has become rebellion as much as conformity, a form of both protest and expression. For the first time in history, the same Tula lipstick, a hairstyle, a garment, could symbolize empowerment for one and oppression for another. This complexity is what makes modern beauty so paradoxical, so profoundly human. As people navigated a digital world overflowing with images, they began to question the structures that had long shaped desire. Feminist movements, queer visibility, and globalized fashion all collided to reshape how society viewed the human form. The gaze once belonging to kings, artists, and priests now belonged to everyone. Anyone could look, anyone could be seen, and everyone could participate in the great theater of appearance. Yet, for all its liberation, the stage was exhausting. In a world of infinite visibility, beauty began to feel less like celebration and more like obligation. The silent comparison that once occurred in noble courts now unfolded on screens across continents. Teenagers compared themselves to influencers. Influencers compared themselves to celebrities, and celebrities competed against algorithms, even as campaigns shouted that all bodies were beautiful. An unspoken hierarchy persisted, shaped by engagement, virality, and the quiet tyranny of perfection. It was a new kind of medievalism, one ruled not by monarchs, but by metrics. Still, within this chaos, beauty continued to serve its timeless purpose: connection. Humans have always used adornment to communicate, to belong, to love. In ancient times, it was paint on cave walls. In medieval times, it was jewels on crowns. In modern times, it is pixels on a profile picture. Beauty, in its purest sense, is an act of translation between the inner and outer self. The postmodern age, for all its noise, began to rediscover this meaning. As people tired of chasing trends, they turned inward, toward authenticity. The clean girl aesthetic, the no-filter movement, and the resurgence of natural looks all hinted at collective fatigue. The pendulum that had swung toward hyper-curation began to drift back toward honesty. But honesty, too, was stylized, carefully lit, softly edited, performatively unperformed. The world had entered an era where even imperfection had an algorithm. Yet, amid this irony, something profound emerged: empathy. People began to see beauty, not as competition, but as conversation. They celebrated difference, learned from other cultures, and slowly dismantled the centuries-old myth that there could only be one ideal. African hairstyles, once stigmatized under colonial standards, became global fashion statements of pride. East Asian skincare philosophies transformed Western industries with ideas of balance and ritual. Indigenous body art traditions inspired designers who sought authenticity in ancient symbolism. The global village was messy, contradictory, and beautiful in its imperfection. For the first time, beauty was no longer the privilege of a few. It was the inheritance of everyone. But the journey was far from over. The rise of artificial intelligence, digital avatars, and the metaverse opened an entirely new chapter in the story of appearance. When faces could be designed, when bodies could exist without flesh, and when desire could be coded, what would beauty mean? The digital body, free from biology, allowed infinite customization, perfect symmetry, flawless skin, impossible proportions. Yet, it also erased the organic texture of being human, as virtual influencers and AI-generated models gained millions of followers. A quiet unease spread. Beauty was becoming detached from reality itself. The same tools that promised self-expression also threatened self-erasure. People began to miss the flaws, the crooked teeth, the asymmetrical eyes, the laughter lines that told stories. In response, a counterculture grew. People began reclaiming imperfection as art. Freckles, scars, and natural hair became symbols of defiance. Just as medieval women once endured discomfort to fit divine ideals, modern individuals endured digital distortion to fit algorithmic ones till they rebelled. The rebellion wasn't loud, it was intimate. It happened in bathrooms and bedrooms, in the quiet moments when someone looked in the mirror and decided they were enough. That silent revolution marked the beginning of a new aesthetic, the aesthetic of peace. This movement didn't reject beauty, it redefined it. Instead of asking, "Am I beautiful enough?" it began to ask, "Am I at peace with myself?" This shift was monumental, echoing the spiritual undertones of earlier centuries. The medieval world had sought beauty as a reflection of divine order. The modern world sought it as a reflection of personal harmony. In both, the ultimate desire was not for vanity, but for meaning. Beauty, it turned out, had never been about faces at all. In the grand sweep of history, From the dim candlelight of medieval chambers to the glowing screens of modern bedrooms, humans have used beauty to cope with chaos. Each age painted its fear and hope upon the body. The pale skin of the Middle Ages whispered of purity amid disease. The powdered wigs of the Enlightenment masked decay beneath reason. The cinematic faces of the 20th century offered escapism amid war. Today's filters and serums serve the same ancient function: to create order from uncertainty, to turn the chaos of living into something briefly, beautifully controlled. And perhaps that is why, despite centuries of critique, beauty endures. It survives revolutions, pandemics, and ideologies, because it speaks to something primal: the desire to be seen, to be valued, to be remembered. Even as definitions shift, the impulse remains timeless. Beauty is the art of existing visibly. And when the noise of modern life grows too loud, when the infinite scroll numbs the senses, the act of simply seeing one's reflection becomes a quiet act of defiance. To exist in one's own image, without distortion or disguise, is the purest form of beauty there has ever been. As the world moves deeper into the digital unknown, one truth remains: beauty, no matter how many times it changes costume, is still humanity's favorite mirror. As the story of beauty stretches into the unknown future, it carries with it the entire weight of history: the whispers of ancient queens, the rituals of medieval courtiers, the artistry of Renaissance painters, the elegance of Victorian salons, and the restless glow of modern screens. Every age believed it had finally understood what beauty meant, only for the next generation to rewrite the definition again. Perhaps this endless cycle is what keeps beauty alive. It is not a single idea, but an eternal conversation between time, culture, and the human spirit. When historians of the future look back on the early 21st century, they will see an era both liberated and imprisoned by its reflections. Never before have so many people had the power to shape their own image, yet never before has that image been so fragile. The beauty standards of our time, though wrapped in language of empowerment and still carry echoes of their ancestors: the medieval ideal of purity, the Renaissance worship of symmetry, the Victorian hunger for control, the cinematic allure of perfection. These ghosts linger in our filters, our photos, our self-perceptions. They are proof that beauty has always been less about the surface and more about longing, the longing to be seen, to matter, to transcend the ordinary. But if we strip away the cosmetics and the codes, if we look past the mirrors and the metrics, what remains is something deeply human: the desire to connect. Beauty, at its most honest, is an invitation. It says, "Look at me and see yourself reflected too." That is why no definition can ever contain it, because beauty is not a static image, but a shared experience. It exists in the space between the beholder and the beheld, between the artist and the subject, between history and memory. In the medieval world, beauty was a form of devotion. In the modern world, it is a form of identity. And in the future, it may become something entirely new, perhaps, a language of empathy that transcends body, gender, and culture altogether. Imagine a world where beauty is not measured by symmetry or youth, but by the stories etched into our faces, the kindness in our eyes, the strength of our presence. Technology, for all its distortions, might actually help us get there. As AI learns to replicate perfection with effortless precision, humans may finally lose interest in perfection itself. The flawless, virtual faces of the future might become so common that imperfection will once again feel sacred. The scar, the wrinkle, the asymmetry, these will become rare treasures, marks of reality in a sea of simulations. And in that shift, humanity may rediscover what medieval thinkers once knew instinctively, that beauty is fleeting, and that is precisely what makes it divine. In the candlelit rooms of the past, people adorned themselves not to deny mortality, but to dance with it, to defy time by embracing its grace. The pale skin, the painted lips, the silken garments were ways of saying, "I am alive, and I will be remembered." Today, our rituals are different, but their spirit is the same. When someone takes a photo, applies makeup, or edits a video, they are doing what humans have always done, capturing a moment against the current of time. Beneath the technology, beneath the trends, there is still the same trembling wish to leave a trace. Perhaps that is why beauty will never disappear, even if it continues to change beyond recognition. It survives because it fulfills a fundamental human need, the need to translate our fleeting existence into something visible, something that others can understand. Beauty is the bridge between the internal and the external, the invisible and the seen. And as long as we seek meaning in the mirror, beauty will continue to evolve with us. But the most beautiful truth of all is that beauty no longer belongs to kings, queens, or gods. It belongs to everyone. It belongs to the child who draws on their face with crayons, the elder whose wrinkles tell the story of laughter, the artist who paints bodies of all shapes and colors, and the dreamer who finds beauty in the ordinary hum of life. The modern world, for all its confusion, has finally allowed beauty to breathe freely. The standards are still there, yes, but they are softer now, more fluid, less absolute. They bend and stretch to include new faces, new genders, new ways of being human. This openness marks the dawn of a new aesthetic one, not of domination, but of coexistence. Beauty has become dialogue, not decree. And perhaps that is what the medieval poets and philosophers were always reaching for, but could never fully grasp. The idea that beauty was never meant to divide, only to remind us of our shared wonder. In this way, the story of beauty is also the story of compassion. When we recognize beauty in another person, we are, in a sense, recognizing our own reflection in them. It is the oldest and simplest act of empathy. Long before words or philosophy, humans knew how to find meaning through admiration. The curve of a shell, the shimmer of water, the glow of another's eyes. Those instincts still live within us, ancient and unbroken. Even in a future filled with holograms and digital avatars, we will still pause to marvel at a sunset or the unguarded smile of a stranger. That moment of quiet awe is where beauty truly lives, not in cosmetics, not in pixels, but in perception. To see beauty is to affirm life. And so, as the night deepens and the centuries whisper behind us, the long story of beauty reaches its softest note. The medieval lady closing her wooden mirror, the Renaissance artist wiping his brush, the Victorian woman untying her corset, the modern individual turning off their screen. They are all part of the same lineage, the same rhythm of longing and relief. Each has looked at their reflection and wondered if it was enough, and each has learned, in their own time, that it always was. The standards may rise and fall, the faces may change, but the act of seeking beauty, the act of finding meaning in the visible remains humanity's quiet heartbeat. In the end, perhaps that is why we call this boring history, because the story never truly changes, it just wears different faces. Yet, in its repetition, in its endless reinvention, it teaches us the one lesson that has always mattered. Beauty is not something we create to impress the world. It is something we recognize when we are finally at peace with ourselves.